What's up, guys? Hope y'all are well. I'm going to dive right into today's reading. So, we're picking up on this paragraph. Whoa! This paragraph here. Yesterday we were just introduced to the anti-conceptual mentality, which is basically a refusal or a tendency to not want to form concepts, and therefore you only live in the present. You only think of the present. You don't conceptualize the future, and you don't analyze the past. And you can only deal with like specific perceptual concretes or specific examples that you see. But you can't deal with concepts to a very high degree. Oops. Okay, this is interesting. All right, I'm going to try to break down this paragraph. All right. Oh, it took a while. Also, I realized you can't see the... Maybe I should go over here. Whoa. You can't really see what I'm... Yeah, you can't see what I'm writing. Okay, well, I'll just read it out loud. So, the hidebound traditionalist and the modern college activist are two sides of the same psychoepistemological coin. So they're the same phenomena, or I guess cause, but just expressed in different ways. The first seeks to escape the terror of an unknowable future by seeking safety in the alleged wisdom of the past. So the traditionalist, meaning the person who just looks to the past for answers of what to do in the future, they skip the thinking of dealing with their like specific problems and just resort to the past as a heuristic. So it skips all the effort required to think super deeply about what you want for your future and to essentially plan, and it somewhat circumvents the emotional toil that comes from thinking about the future and thinking about the unknowability of the future, the fact that you don't have knowledge of what's going to happen, which is really scary. And you have to deal with that if you're going to plan for the future. If you just rely on tradition, you can just look to the past and say, oh, I'm not going to deal with these emotions. I'm just going to do what my ancestors did, or my dad or parents did. I think the fear is still in the back of your mind, but it's not. The fear of the future is still in the back of your mind, but it's not on the forefront. You've pushed it to the side. Whereas if you really grapple with planning for the future and try and essentially plan your life, like, you're going to have to deal with that terror head on, which is really scary. So, fuck, there's a fly. So that makes sense. The second, so this is the modern college activist. And this was written, I think, in like, I don't know, many years ago. Like, a long time ago. Actually, I can find out. Yeah, 1970s. So 50 years. Quite a while. So the second seeks to escape the terror of an unintelligible past by screaming his way into an undeniable future. If it's not good for my father, it's not good enough for me. You know, I don't know how true that is. You know, I'm not really sure what the motivations of activists are. Also, there are very legitimate uses for activism, or like that it's not a completely illegitimate thing to do. Now, obviously, Rand is referring to the non-legitimate activists who are activists over non-legitimate issues. Oh my God, fire alarm's going off. All right, sorry about that. But I don't know if even the irrational, or let's say the irrational activist, I don't they're, I don't know. I don't know if their motivation is to escape the terror of an unintelligible past. I don't know if that's true. It is true, though, whether you rely solely on the past or, well, I think it is, well, okay, sorry. Let me take a step back. So, neither group is able to live in the present because man's lifespan is a continuum whose only integrator is his conceptual faculty. Okay, what does that mean? What comes to mind immediately is our life. Like, we don't just live in the present out of context. We live in the present with like our past, like what we've learned from the past and our past experiences, which influence our decisions now. And we also live in the present with the context of our future plans and what we want to do. And that will influence our decisions in the present. Because like if you have goals, right, your goals influence your day-to-day actions, and your past will influence your day-to-day actions because you might have you hopefully have learned stuff from mistakes or just stuff that's happened in your past. So both of those two things are influencing your present, and the way you apply that context is through your conceptual faculty. Because it's like both of those things, your past and your future, they're completely abstract. Like past is just memories, and the future is just plans. Those are completely abstract things, abstract concepts. Well, memories is technically like a thing, but well, yeah, they're both abstract. That's the point. So the only way you can reconcile or integrate the two is through the future and the past, is through your conceptual faculty, is through reason, is through concepts. So if you ignore one of those two, you won't be able to live in the present in an ideal way. Because like if you completely avoid the past and don't learn from the past, you're going to repeat the same mistakes, which is not good. And if you don't pay any attention to the future, then you're going to be wandering aimlessly toward who knows where and who knows toward what. So you need both in order to live your best life in the present. Okay. Interesting. Okay, sorry, I bit my tongue. This is very interesting. So, a person who has the anti-conceptual mentality, they don't integrate things, but they just associate concretes together. So they don't form concepts, they don't form ideas, they don't understand. It's kind of akin to memorizing versus understanding. Memorizing, like you might know a definition, or or you might memorize a definition of a word, but you don't understand like why that word is or concept is necessary and how it and why it's real or why it's true. What its purpose is, but you can memorize it. So it's like if it's a very surface level grasp. Okay. Okay. I think that. Sorry, I was I'm messing with the mic audio to try and cut out my roommate's noise. Okay. So, what's the main point of this paragraph? Yeah, his subconscious doesn't store ideas, but just accumulation of concretes. But there's no concepts formed from those concretes. Concretes, facts, unidentified feelings, piled into unlabeled mental file folders. So there's no understanding. There's just a grouping that the person can bring to mind when, I don't know, something happens or they make a decision. Like they can call to mind this association, but it's very surface level. And if they ever deal with like a new situation, if they ever deal with a new situation, I imagine it's going to be really hard for them because they can't just call up their groupings or their mental. They can't just call up this random association because this new scenario doesn't fit that grouping. So, and if this person could form concepts, they could analyze this new situation and try to figure out what's going on, but they've given up that process, or they refuse to go through that process, and so they're just going to be confused. And within such limits, yep. It's like this person won't think out of a specific context. So, the Midwestern businessman, he did very well within a very specific context, which was the limits set by his particular city district. So that was in regard to his issues with politics. The lady novelist, she wrote a bunch of books, but yeah, within the terms set by her college teachers, and there's no questioning those terms. So it's like, yeah, within a certain framework, this person can do super well, but they won't go outside that framework. They won't go outside like the mental associations they've already accumulated. I wonder if there's like a relationship between this and a person who won't try anything new or is really afraid to try new things. I wonder if there's some sort of connection. I don't know. Basically, the anti-conceptual mentality, like that person, I don't know what, a person with this mentality, they can't give you fundamental reasons. They might be able to go one or two layers deep if you ask them why, like why they do a certain thing or believe a certain idea, but they can't get to the fundamental because that requires a ton of abstract thinking and a ton of conceptualization. And they don't do that generally. Yeah, true. So if you question someone with the anti-conceptual mentality and like you pick apart one, let's just say one specific instance, like you ask why, you ask someone, why do you, I don't know, why do you believe, I'm trying to think of something non-controversial. Well, we can use the novelist, for example. Like if you ask her, like, why do you believe that you shouldn't write novels um, that are based in the future, that are more idealistic? And she might say, well, because novels are meant to be this way. And you can ask why, and they'll show it, well, that's what my college professors asked. And then you can ask, well, why does that, or not ask, but taught me. And then you can say, well, why does that matter? Blah, blah, blah. You keep going to the why, and eventually, like, if they can't answer you, that calls into question that their entire mentality. Because, again, this is a mentality. It's not just, it's how they approach pretty much every situation or most situations. So you call into question one specific instance of this mentality. For them, in their mind, it calls into question everything they think, all of their ideas, and the process by which they come to their conclusions. And that's really painful and really scary. And so that's where you get, so when you start pushing someone, they get really defensive because you're not just questioning this one belief or idea they hold, you're questioning the entire way their mind works. And that's a big deal. Is threatened not, yeah, see, because what is threatened then is not a particular idea, but that mind's whole structure. The hell ranges from fear to resentment to stubborn evasion to hostility to panic to malice to hatred. Because that's like such a painful thing to realize, is that, oh, I'm thinking entirely wrong, and that means all the ideas I hold they might be wrong, but, well, there's a good chance they're wrong. And at the very least, I don't know the reasons for whether they're true or false. That means every single action and decision I've made, I don't know whether those decisions are good or bad because I don't know if the thinking behind those actions and decisions is sound, because all of my thinking is fucked up. So that's really scary to come to acknowledge. Really scary, and so it's very it makes sense for people to become defensive and be very emotional and be very hostile when you start to poke at that. I'll be right back. I'm going to tell my roommate to be quiet. All right, we're back. You should be a bit more quiet now. Okay. All right. Okay. Interesting. So apparently this is an example of the anti-conceptual mentality. So a blonde goes on a date with a guy, and when she is asked later whether she had a good time, she answers, "No, he was awfully boring. He never said anything I'd ever heard before. He never said anything I had ever heard before." So all he said was new things? How's that boring? He never said anything I had ever heard before. So all he did was say new things, and so because of that, she thought he was boring. Okay. Let's see Rand's explanation. Yeah, so she can only deal with people who don't say new things, and just say things that she's heard before. I don't know, this seems like a not great example in my mind. Like, I would need to, like, the context of the novel might make it so that this answer makes more sense. Like, out of context, this is just a weird answer. Like, why would your response be boring? He was boring because he said new things? Like, that doesn't make any sense. If she said I didn't like him because he said new things, that would be one thing, but boring is, I don't know, I don't really like that. So you can think of any dogma as an example of the anti-conceptual mentality, I think, because they're not asking why. They're just repeating what they've been told without a critical understanding of the reasons behind what they've been told. And whether what they've been told makes sense, they simply accept it. You see this in some aspects of religion, the dogmatic aspects, where you just accept rules or teachings as uncritically, and you're just like, this is true, and you don't try to dig deeper and really understand it and really grapple with it. I think you see this in maybe some like college activists where they just repeat slogans, or any repetition of slogans. That is probably the anti-conceptual mentality. You have like you're just repeating something you memorized. You don't actually understand what the slogan means. And I think you see this phenomenon most clearly with tradition. Right there's a lack of questioning with tradition. Generally, most simply accept whatever traditions they've been given. They don't analyze them. They don't ask, is this a good thing that we do? Should we do something different? They just say, well, we've done this in the past, therefore we're going to continue doing it in the future. And I'm not saying traditions are bad. Like, there's a lot of value in certain traditions, but the issue is, like, you want to ask, is this thing good or bad? What are the pros and cons of it in general? And should we continue doing it? It seems like it's just dropping context. Yeah, I guess if you uncritically accept rules, yeah, you don't have to deal with the consequences of those rules because the rules are what they are, man. I didn't pick them. We have to go by them. Um, you do still have to deal with the results of following the rules, but you don't get to assess the cause because you can't question the cause. Right? You can't question the rule itself. You just have to deal with what the result of the rule. What would be an example? Let me think of an example. So, like, I don't know, if you live in a cult and I don't know, they have a rule where you have to, I don't know, let's say like there's just a rule where everyone has to give, I don't know, 40% of their income to the cult leader. It's just a rule. You're not allowed to question it. So, right, you have to deal with the result of, okay, I'm going to have 40% less money, but you don't get to ask the cause. Well, why am I giving this guy money? Like, why? What's the reason for doing that? It's just a rule, and you have to accept it. Otherwise, you get kicked out of the cult. To deal with facts as discrete phenomenon, unhampered by the tangibles of theory. I think that's true because if you don't form concepts and if you solely rely on tradition, you can't relate any fact to a concept or to like its fundamental concept. Like you can view each fact as like a discrete new phenomena, but you can't relate it to a broader concept that would help simplify your thinking. You have to take each new fact, each new occurrence, each new circumstance as like brand new, generally. And then there's a feeling of safety. Definitely. And you can kind of flip this on its head. They want to feel safe, and they also don't want to feel the fear associated with thinking, because basically, at least in my mind, because I've had some of this. Maybe I don't know if I would appeal to traditions, but definitely fear of thinking really deeply about stuff because there's so much you don't know. Like it feels very difficult and very like almost impossible to really get to fundamentals and to create these abstract principles. And so there's a bit of laziness. I'm speaking from my experience. A bit of laziness of like I don't want to think through this stuff, so I'm just going to do what other people say or what my traditions tell me to do or whatever. I think there's also a fear of taking your life seriously because if you really grapple with your beliefs and your fundamental ideas, it's scary because the consequences are real, and you might find ideas that you don't really like. You might, and that's scary to deal with. And so if you never get to the root of your problems, of your beliefs, of your principles, and you just say, no, I just do what tradition tells me or what other people tell me or what society, whatever, pick your thing. You don't have to deal with the fear of taking your life seriously, like fully seriously. So if your life doesn't go the way you want it, you can always blame tradition. You'd be like, well, or you can use it as an excuse. Maybe you don't blame it, but you can say, well, whatever. I couldn't I just did what I follow tradition. That's what you're supposed to do. So So there's a lack of taking responsibility for your own life and the outcomes within your life, or of your life. And there's I think that's the main thing. But I do think it stems from a fear of thinking and thinking deeply about issues and about your beliefs, because the consequences of that thinking and the result of that thinking is real. Like imagine, like you dig deep, you introspect about what you believe to be true, like your fundamental core guiding principles in the world, and you find that you don't know what they are. That's really scary, or like you don't have them. That's really scary to recognize, because it's like, well, then how have I been acting? Like what have I been using to like make decisions for the past however many years? What principles have I been using? They might be really bad. And if you don't know what they are, or you're like, I don't have any principles, then you've literally just been making decisions off of whim or gut feeling or what other people tell you, whatever. But there's nothing solid or nothing to ground your decision making and the actions you take, and that can be very painful to recognize. So that'll make sense. That's very interesting. Okay. So the anti-conceptual person dreads philosophy, and specifically ethics, because at least ethics is the branch of philosophy that tells you what you should do, essentially, defines morality, proper morality. And a person with the anti-conceptual mentality, they're relying on rules, heuristics, tradition, what other people tell them to do, etc. And so, they're just incapable, well, because they've accepted this mentality, they are incapable of understanding ethics and living in accordance with they're incapable of understanding ethics, because they can maybe get the, like what Rand says, they might be able to hold the first few concepts in a chain that gets down to like the fundamentals of ethics, but they can't get anything beyond that. And so it's impossible for him to fully grasp the need of ethics and any ethical theory. And this is an interesting point. So fear of outsiders from, let's just say, groups, traditions. I think it's generally, Rand is making the point that it's because outsiders will question things, because they're not, like if you're not in a cult and someone from the outside is looking in, they're like, that's fucking weird. Why are you doing all this crazy shit? To someone inside the cult, you start questioning them. They can't give you answers outside of that's just what we do. Like they can't give you fundamental reasons because of this mentality. And so I love this, the way Rand puts it. He feels his consciousness dissolving in fog. When you ask the why, it's like, oh, I've never done this. I don't know where to go. So this is for my own thinking. The reason why an anti-conceptual person dreads philosophy the most is because philosophy deals with the most broadest abstractions and the broadest conceptual chains. And their whole MO is we don't do concepts here. We just deal with concretes and we just use heuristics. So something that requires a ton of conceptualization is like, no, 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 that's bad. We don't do that. Scary, bad, no, no, no. And if they acknowledge implicitly that, oh, I need philosophy in order to live, like I need to understand my fundamental beliefs that guide all my decisions and actions, if an anti-conceptual person acknowledges that, at least to some degree, especially explicitly, but at the very least implicitly, that's where the evasion comes in. That's where they're like, I'm not going to deal with philosophy. Fuck that. Fuck that. No, no, no. Put that away. Put that away. I don't need that. I don't need that. I'm going to rely on my group. I'm going to rely on what other people tell me to do. No. So that makes sense to me. And I think the reason why they dread ethics the most is because ethics deals with living and actions and decision making, and like the use value of ethics is the clearest, I think, in general for most people. It's like, oh, this is how ethics tells you what you should do, basically, or at least describes what you should do. What is proper action? That has huge implications on your entire life, everything you do. Every single decision you'll make, every single action you'll take, and the outcome of your life, and the outcomes of your life. The results you achieve, everything is, it's dependent on all of philosophy, but it's especially clear with ethics. Because if you accept completely opposite ethical codes, you're going to take opposite actions, and that's going to have an opposite result on your life. One could be extremely good, or let's say lead to a very happy life. The other could lead to an extremely miserable life. So you want to get ethics right because it's so fundamental and it affects so many other things. It's super high leverage. So, yeah, the benefit a person gets from clinging to a group, to tradition, to whatever, to a cult, is that they get to defer all of this thinking and the abstract thinking to the group, and the consequence of that is that he has to do what the group says, which he's fine to do because that's the value he's getting. The value that the person who joins, let's say, a cult gets. I don't know if a cult's a great example. A person with this mentality, they want to be told what to do because then they don't have to think and deal with the effort of thinking and the fear involved in thinking. But it does call an interesting question. Who establishes the rules of tradition? Again, in theory, it's tradition, but in practice, it's the leaders of the group. They set the agenda in general. So the anti-conceptual person treats the rules and dictates of the leaders of the group as absolutes that you can never question. And so they confuse the metaphysical and the man-made. Not even confuse, they subordinate the metaphysical to the man-made. They treat the man-made as absolute. The dictates, the whims, the rules, the demands of the leaders, of their leaders, as unquestionable absolutes. Man, that's so interesting. So, you see how this last point's really interesting to me. So, the group comes to his rescue even if he gets into trouble, and he does not earn their help. It is given to him automatically. It is not at the precarious mercy of his own virtues, flaws, or errors. It is his by grace of the fact that he belongs to the group. So, the group will protect you, and it gives you an excuse to not take responsibility for your life, because the group will come in and save you no matter what happens. So you can be an unvirtuous, lazy, you can make a lot of error, you can evade, you can not deal with your emotions, you can do a lot of things that are bad for your life. And as long as you do what the group tells you to do, they will protect you from the consequences, generally. I mean, or at least they say they'll protect you. And so you can avoid having to actually deal with your problems and to live a good, virtuous life. And to correct your mistakes, because you can rely on the group. Yeah, so if you are loyal to a group above ideas, above truth, above virtue, above what you think is right, then that's profoundly immoral. Because, like, let's say, like, I don't know, someone in your group kills an outsider. I'm thinking, like, back in tribal days. And the outsider didn't do anything wrong. You have to stand by your group member because, and let's say he didn't break any rules. You have to stand by him, even if you think he is in the wrong, because that's what your group demands. And if you don't, then you'll be kicked out. That's really bad. I think you see this in, like, political circles where you say something that goes against the group. In, like, the extreme circles, you say one thing that goes against the group, you're kicked out. Even when that thing is wrong, you're kicked out, excluded, made fun of, whatever it is. When really you should be, like, the fundamental guiding question is what is true, not what does my group say. Yeah, primitive tribes. Which if you if you're literally like an uncontacted tribe and you have no like you have no education, no understanding of science or like a scientific way of thinking, then yeah, of course you're going to be like, I think it's pretty reasonable to have this mentality. Um, oh, interesting. The leaders of groups, let's just call them anti-conceptual groups, they also seek protection from reality, protection from thinking. Well, at least that's what Rand is claiming. But they just take on a different role than the members. Racism. Interesting. And xenophobia. So let's see. How is racism an example of the anti-conceptual mentality? That's a good question. Did my Did my camera die? Hold up. I want to look. Oh. All right, so my camera's frozen. Unfortunate. We'll have to deal with that. Oh well. Timer's up. So I'm gonna end the stream. All right, good stream, everyone. I'll see ya. Oh, my camera's still fucked up. Whoa. I'll see you similar time tomorrow. All right, have a good one, guys.